Okay, let's do this. It seems like everyone's really right this time about this whole thing. You know, I'm usually the last person to complain about the microtransactions and stuff like that. I have a very high breaking point with this stuff. And I do want to preface that I'm a really big Star Wars fan. If you don't know that, let me roll this stupid, embarrassing clip I always roll. Wow. Oh my god. I don't know, this is like I feel like this is my magnum opus. Yes, so like everyone in my demographic, I love Star Wars, I really do. And I had a lot of high hopes for this game, but honestly, the whole thing is really, it's just breaking my heart. Now, before I get to the nitty-gritty stuff, I do want to talk about what I do like about the game, because I think Battlefront 2 was almost awesome because it really righted most of the wrongs that the first new Battlefront game had. First and foremost, it gives you a campaign, and the campaign, when I started it, I was absolutely in love. I was so hyped for it. As things went on, though, you notice that it's a little predictable and a little forgettable, but it's still a decent, fun ride. It's a Star Wars game. It follows Iden Versio, who is the commander of the Inferno Squadron. This is like this elite group of stormtroopers set up by the Emperor, and you pick up right before the end of Return of the Jedi when the Death Star explodes. You probably heard a lot of this. And it's cool because it's from the Empire's perspective. You're shooting rebels. The stormtroopers are on your team. And I did mistakenly shoot a couple just because I'm so used to killing stormtroopers after so many years. But right there, initially, the way it kicks off, it's so exciting and so interesting from a Star Wars perspective, but unfortunately it quickly actually strays away from Iden Versio's story and becomes a little bit more of a greatest hits of playing famous Star Wars characters. Now, I will say, although the story is very much written around showing off lots of characters, what they're doing after Return of the Jedi, I still do like it. I find it kind of respectful of the source material because it acknowledges the Aftermath books, which I wasn't the biggest fan of, but that is canon now. And while it acknowledges it, it doesn't like step on the toes of Aftermath. It does carve out its own little place here, and I thought that was interesting. Also, this isn't really a spoiler, but they gave Han Solo a beard. I don't know why, but I saw that and I went, oh! But you see a lot of interesting places. You do a lot of interesting things with the characters. Some are a little weird, like with Princess Leia, you're fighting a battle on Naboo. That was a little out of place. As predictable as a lot of it is, there's a couple moments that really made me like geek out as a Star Wars fan. Some really nice things I like to see that I didn't expect. But honestly, when it went back to Iden Versio, that's when I wanted to play the most because I wanted to get to know her. I wanted to see what her whole deal was. That's where I thought the focus of the game would be, and it strayed from that, and that was kind of a bummer. Also, the fact that, number one, it's only like 4 or 5 hours. You can finish it real quick, and it doesn't really end. It doesn't really have a definite ending. It's coming in expanded content that's going to be added for free, which is nice. No season pass, no DLC bullshit there, but there's plenty other places. I think the single-player campaign did really succeed in the aerial battles because a different team worked on that, and it totally shows because it feels like a completely different game just based around aerial dogfight battles in space, and I think that works perfectly, and I love that. That stuff I can play endlessly, and thankfully they did include that as a multiplayer mode, and it's good. Ultimately, the campaign just gives you a couple little things to chew on after Return of the Jedi that's going to officially be canon, and it's just a good Star Wars ride. It's not perfect, it has its flaws, but as a huge fan, I did enjoy the ride. I thought it was a good time. It had some fun action set-piece moments, a couple of surprises and things you wouldn't expect, and it got me hyped. I just love Star Wars. I'm sorry. But moving on, I guess, to the multiplayer, I will say, again, I think the multiplayer, what they did here, I think it feels way more like actual Battlefront, like the old Battlefront. I think it's the variety of scenarios and time periods and a bunch of maps that really make it feel like that. There's a bunch of vehicles, there's always a bunch of stuff going on. Your clone troopers 1 second, your stormtroopers the next, your Darth Maul, your Yoda, your flying ships, you're hopping in land speeders, you're riding tauntauns, you're doing all of this Star Wars stuff, and it feels good. It's fun. It's definitely a simple shooter. It's more of a casual shooter, but it's faster this time around. I found it really effective. I found myself really drawn into the multiplayer because there's the big all-out battle mode with you and tons of other characters, and it just felt so much stronger than last time around. I think because last time it was like you were only playing it on a couple of maps. Here, again, variety is the key, and it just makes it that much better. And I think part of what helps is just the game looks amazing. The Frostbite, I played it on Xbox One X, and it looks fucking gorgeous. Everything looks like realistic. The stormtroopers, the shine of their helmets, everything is like meticulously done down to little gonk droids walking around and dirt on the streets. Like there's so much detail here, and I couldn't get enough of that, even in multiplayer, and it kind of made multiplayer that much more of a treat because you're having fun shooting dudes, but you're also looking at gorgeous things, whether you're in a ship or you're on the ground in first person or third person. Between these different modes and like heroes and villains mode and an arcade mode that's pretty good, it has scenarios that you can play through if you just want to wreck shop as Kylo Ren or Darth Vader or Yoda or whatever, you can do that. And there's a lot there to chew on and a lot to keep you busy. And with the fact that the season pass is not a thing and you're going to be getting the content later on, I would say that I think it's a really good game. I don't think it's a perfect game. I think it's way better than the last Battlefront game. And as a Star Wars fan, I'm totally down with it. But then we get into the whole issue with microtransactions and loot boxes. I don't know if you go on the internet a lot, but everyone has been talking about it. A lot of people have been raging about it. And I like I said, I'm always like the last person. I'm very much always that person that's like, oh, you can ignore it. Don't let it bother you. I just ignore it. I don't spend any money in the game, and I go on my merry way. But here in Battlefront, it's one of the worst examples, and the fact that it is baked in completely to design itself is what bothers me the most in terms of progression on before you buys. And here, I talk about progression systems because I love them so much because progression systems are a fascinating way to explain why we keep playing, how we get incentivized to keep playing, how we feel that reward, and just what we're working towards, whether it's a grind or not. And here, Star Wars Battlefront 2 kind of ruins it, man. The mechanics, to me, really do feel pay to win. Even though I think some grind accusations are a little bit overblown, I think some people are jumping into this so hard, even though they weren't even like planning on playing the game in the first place. But really, on paper, the star cards are the way they are. EA has announced that they are temporarily turning off real money purchases, which I think shows they did hear us, which is nice, but it also kind of feels like they're just saving face because they said it's only temporary. So it's really not enough. I'm glad they're trying, but they need to show us more. Even with the monetization turned off, it doesn't really change how I feel. That's an absolute problem. But for me personally, what bothers me even more than that, as bad as that is, what bothers me more is that the progression system isn't fun. It's tied directly into the loot box and microtransaction system, making it kind of a shell of an actual progression system, and it's totally lame. You know, you can level up your character through an arbitrary number, like you rank them up to level 7, level 8, but it doesn't really mean much. Really, the whole progression and customization is tied around earning these loot boxes, whether in-game, which they do give you pretty generously, but it doesn't matter, or spending real currency. And then you open up these things and you get these cards and you equip them to your character to make your character better. There are caps in place here and there to like control someone just buying and overpowering their character, but it's still pretty bad, and ultimately, it's not fun. The game essentially assumes that through having fun with progression and leveling up my character, I get joy out of earning and opening a loot box, and I don't. That's not fun to me. It's never been fun. It's been vaguely fun in Overwatch, but otherwise not at all. And for the game to just take that full on into the main core mechanic, it's just not a good time. I'm not into it at all, and I think it sets a dangerous precedent for the game industry, especially with the pay-to-win mechanics, the way it's unabashedly going full force into this for a $60 game. I can't believe I'm saying this. I never rant and complain about this stuff, but Battlefront 2 is pushing me to the point. You fuck with a Star Wars fan, you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. I'm sorry. And especially because the way I am and the way I approach games, like I said, I try to ignore this stuff and I try to just let their microtransactions be over there. I understand that some way developers need to make money. I think there's better ways to go about it, totally. And I tried, and I've played tons of Battlefront 2 trying to ignore it, but it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. It does not feel good. That element of the game does not feel fun. Now, I could write that off if progression just wasn't good, if it wasn't tied into pay-to-win mechanics and loot boxes. And because that's how it is in this game, I cannot. So a lot of you guys might disagree with me. The fact that I can say good things about Battlefront 2 and the fact that I really do stand by my title where I think it was almost awesome. I just, so close. But thankfully, this game does seem to sort of be bringing people together, whether it's shit posters and trolls, or people who have genuine criticisms, or people who don't usually care about the microtransaction stuff. We're all pushed to kind of vocalizing our concerns, and it seems like EA is catching wind of them, but you can't fix the core root of the game being built around loot box progression. You can't fix that. But if this is the game to push the conversation and really usher change in the game industry with free-to-play mechanics and loot boxes and microtransactions and all that shit, so be it. It's the game that has to fall on the sword. fine. I just really, really wish it wasn't a Star Wars game because I love Star Wars so much. And I think they have so much here because it is a lovingly made game to a point. There is a big group of people who worked on this game that absolutely loved what they did and faithfully recreated a fun Star Wars game. But it's that other section of it that kind of just sours the whole batch that is the game, you know? If you did pick it up, and I know a lot of people don't want to buy it out of protest, and I completely understand, but I do want to know how you feel about it, how you feel about this whole thing. Am I blowing out of proportion? Are we blowing out of proportion? Are we not getting angry enough? I want to know how you guys feel. I know the comments are going to be an absolute shit show, but I'm looking forward to having some civil discussion about this. Do you think Battlefront 2 can ever be saved? Personally, I don't. As much as I want to like it, I don't think they can completely fix it. But I want to talk to you guys, so let's talk down there. And you know, you can always find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Jake Baldino as well. But you guys know, thank you so much for coming around here and listening to me ramble about Star Wars and video games. My favorite things. But as always, I'm Jake Baldino. Thanks for watching. You can subscribe because video games.